Today we're going to have a look at these Sony Walkmans. They're both identical. They're the model WM-FX551. They date from the late 1990s, so they're getting on a bit, but not as old as some of the oldest ones, of course. They're both quite high-end models. They've got full logic controls, automatic reverse, remote controls if you want it, and they're very well made. Very well put together, very serviceable. But unfortunately, one of them doesn't work properly. So today we're going to take them apart, see what's wrong with it, and see if I can combine the two to make one working one. This first one I bought off eBay a few years ago, second hand. It worked for quite a long time. It worked more or less perfectly. There was a slight issue with the cassette deck, which I think was an issue of the belt becoming a bit stretched with age. But recently, the radio stopped working. Oddly enough, it turns on, but it crashes. It's like the processor in it crashes. Can't figure out why, but the cassette still works adequately well. I'll just demonstrate that fault now. I'll plug some headphones in. I'll put a freshly charged Eneloop battery in. Takes one AA cell, goes right in the front there. You can see the LCDs just sprung to life. Now if I press the radio, it should come on, but it'll crash. Now you can see the LCDs come on. It says 96.1 megahertz. It did beep, and no matter what I press, nothing happens. That should activate the tape, that should change the band, menu, station. Nothing happens, we can't turn it off, we can't do anything with it. The only thing we can do is open this back up and take the battery out to reset the processor. Now it's come back on. Now if I press the tape play button, it should activate the cassette mechanism absolutely fine. And as you can see and hear, that's worked, and now because there's no taping, it's gone into auto reverse. Now stop it. And it works fine. We can go forwards. We can go backwards. But as soon as we turn the radio on, it crashes. And in fact, this time it's crashed on the beep. So you might be able to hear that there. I'm just holding the speaker up to the microphone. You might be able to just about hear the beep. Now if we move this out of the way, I've got another one here. Again, I got this off eBay. Now this one isn't in as nice cosmetic condition as the other one. You might not really notice that on the video. The cassette belt is also not as good. However, the radio does seem to work fine. Let's give it a quick test. I can put a fully charged cell in. Plug some headphones in, and it comes on fine. We can change the station up. Just noise on there. We can change to AM, and we can turn it off. And the cassette just about works. It doesn't like that because the belt's knackered. But the electronics work fine. Now, being quite high-end models, these are held together with screws, and the service manuals for them are freely available, which explain how to take them apart and how to service them. So I'm going to crack these open and we'll take a look inside. I've undone those screws, and now this front panel should just about lift off. And that reveals the one of the printed circuit boards. There's actually two printed circuit boards in here. That's the top one, which contains all the radio electronics. The bottom one is mostly audio. Let's go in for a closer look. Here's a closer up view of that top board. I've tried to light it up nicely so you can see it. Just a few more screws to undo and we can take it off and reveal what's underneath. I've undone the screws. Take that battery out and this board should just lift off. If we flip it over, you can see it uses a nice board-to-board connector. There's no dodgy cabling in it, it's all nice connectors. We've got a little plastic spacer here to provide the correct spacing between boards. And now we're onto this bottom board. This is mostly audio, I think. This is the audio headphone jack is just here. This Toshiba chip has the Dolby logo, so that probably does the Dolby noise reduction, but I think it might also do other audio things as well. We've got nice brass wheels for the cassette mechanism. Here's the motor. This little ribbon cable here connects the tape head. This socket down here is for an external power supply. But this Walkman is the one which had lesser cosmetic condition, so I'm going to keep this top board and put the rest of this to one side. And I'm going to dismantle the other Walkman, the one that's in better cosmetic condition, and try and put this top board into this Walkman and see if it'll work. Right, now that these are both apart, I'm just going to swap them over and see what happens. Of course, when you're making a video, something always going to get stuck. Now we'll put this board on and put a battery in, and hopefully that'll confirm for us whether the problem was in this top board or whether it's in the bottom board. Oops. Oh, we've got the hold switch stuck on. Ah, there we go. Wasn't holding it down enough, but pressing the radio button, it activates the radio fine. Now we can change the channel, we can change the band, we can go through the menu. Looks to me like that works fine. There we go. So the next thing we need to do on this Walkman is change the belt. Unfortunately, belts do stretch over time and they wear out, and it means the mechanism doesn't work properly anymore. So I'm just going to get a new one. Here's the belt I purchased from CPC a while back. I think it's the right size. Let's go and check. Let's just pick the old one off. Always make a note of the way these go on, otherwise you'll have a nightmare trying to get them back. Now we can see from that that's about the right. That is the right size belt. I don't know if it'll quite show up on video, but the one I've bought is a little bit thicker than the old one. That probably won't matter too much as long as it actually fits. Let's try and put the new one on. Putting new belts on mechanisms like this can be a little bit fiddly. Actually, that was easier than I thought it would be. Let's put the board back on and see what happens. It might not be very obvious on the video, but this belt unfortunately doesn't work. It's too thick. You might just see it's just about moving, but it's not quite moving all the way through. So yeah, it's too thick. But fortunately I do have another one. Now, as part of my Walkman collection, I also have this WM-FX551. It's in really good condition. It's a higher end model than this one. Now, I bought this, and the person who sold it to me had put a new belt in, and it does work absolutely fine. Now, the reason I'm going to remove the belt from here and have this out of order is because this takes a pesky battery. It takes a pesky proprietary battery. It's one of these rectangular batteries. It's only 1.5 amp hours. You can't substitute it for a modern nickel metal hydride like an Eneloop. You can't use an alkaline, and it doesn't last very long. So, although it is a really nice Walkman to use, and is slightly smaller than this is a lot more practical. Internally though, the design is more or less the same except for the battery. Right, so I've removed the belt that was too thick. That's here. This is the belt out of the other Walkman. I believe this is a reasonably new belt. It certainly looks smaller than the old one that came out of here. Let's try and thread it through. That's on. That looks like it's moving absolutely fine. Right, I've put the new belt in. I've screwed on the new top board. Let's see if it argues with us when we play a tape. And will it reverse? And forward. And rewind. That mechanism works fine. The radio comes on fine. You can turn it off. I think it works. Now we just need to test it with some music, and also we need to test the tape speed. A new belt can sometimes affect the tape speed. If that happens, there's a little knob just here. You can use that to adjust it. I've connected the Walkman up to an amplifier. Let's test it. Radio works. Now let's try tape. Well, it loaded that tape up with no arguments whatsoever. That particular tape isn't a particularly high quality recording, but it did work fine. The speed sounded fine. I think that's fully working. I think I'm going to be able to use this regularly. Anyway, I hope you found that useful or interesting. These are quite nice Walkmans. You don't see them that often. I think the cheaper ones were a lot more prevalent, and they're nowhere near as nice to use or nicely made or as repairable.